Hi. I wanted to make a video for quite a while now and send it over to you, but I was never really sure if I'm ready to make it. Um, but I'm ready now, so I'm going to make it before I change my mind. I've been watching you and all the brave people that are coming uh, to you and sharing their stories. And this is what I wanted to say. I was at the protest this weekend. I was at the protest in Hyde Park. I was there when Dr. Heiko was arrested. It was my megaphone he was speaking through to all the people that gathered in Hyde Park. And I was there when he was released the next day at Wandsworth Police Station. I was there and I was privileged to hear him speak, and it made me so proud to see this speech and to see that people can stand in their truth. So I wanted to make this video and tell you something about me. I was born in a communist country, and when I was 25, I moved to England. And I could tell you a story about solidarity because I lived through it. And I could tell you a story about Berlin Wall because as a child living in Poland, I watched all of it and I experienced the movement of country being moved and starting from fresh and fighting. And I could tell you all these stories, but I'm going to tell you a story about my grandfather. And my grandfather was just an average man. He was a tailor, and he wasn't a rich man. He was actually very poor, and him and my grandmother just tried to live their average life and just get on with whatever was happening on a daily basis. And they had my aunt, and my grandfather just went to work every day. And then one day he didn't come back from work. He didn't come back because he was arrested on the street. And that was it. So my grandma was told that he got arrested by one of the neighbors, and she went to the police station and she asked, and the police didn't know where he is because it wasn't the police that arrested my grandfather. It was the special forces, the special police that arrested my grandfather, and there was just no way to find out what happened to him. And it took about 2 to 3, or maybe a bit longer, a few weeks, to find out where he is. And when she found him, he was already sentenced and he was imprisoned. He was sentenced to 10 years because the government believed that he is the enemy of the state. And there was no trial by jury. There was no trial. I don't know if there even was any trial. There was a judge, one man who decided, signed some papers, and that was it. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for working against the government. And when he was in that prison, he was beaten, he was tortured, his ribs were broken, his lung was punctured, and on some of these incidents he was taken to hospital, and on some occasions he was just left in his cell. And that few years, I think 3 or 4 years went by, he was released earlier, but he remained an enemy of the state. He did not have a right to vote for 10 years, and he couldn't get a job because nobody wanted to hire him. He was a convict. So he didn't have an easy life, but he stood in his truth. That's what he did. He believed something, and he stood in his truth. And he carried on his life, and he had 2 more sons, and one of these sons was my dad. And he died. He died a convict, and he never found out that years later, the government has sent out an apologies, and my grandmother was awarded a compensation as an apology, I guess. And they admitted that it was wrong, that he was an innocent man and he should have never been convicted. And he never lived that to that moment, but I did. I lived till now to tell this story, because my grandfather stood in his truth, and that is what we all really live for, to tell and stand in our truth. And seeing Dr. Heiko arrested and coming out next day and stating the things that he stated and staying in his truth and saying all this, brought me to the point that I wanted to share this with you. We all make these choices in our lives, and they might not always be easy, and they might take us through a very difficult road. But if it wouldn't be for that, if my grandfather would not stand in his truth and he wouldn't be the man that he became, I would not be here today, and I wouldn't be able to stand in my truth as a woman and as a mother, and I wouldn't be able to allow my children to carry on their life so that they can stand in what they believe is right for them. So I guess that's why I'm sharing this story. Sometimes we come across governments, and sometimes we come across situations where we are being convinced to sway or change what we believe. But if we stand in our truth, that's where our power is. No matter how hard that road is, at the end of it, there is always one thing that we are left with: the truth and the power that it gives us, because that's what's inside of us, the power to carry on and be truthful to ourselves.